Good morning and welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security Systems Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Shane Matthews here on a April Fool's Day. Hopefully the month of April will be a little bit better than the month of March. Finally, March is over, thank goodness, and we can move forward. Hopefully everyone out there is staying safe. On today's program, we're going to be joined about 8:15. Pat Dooley in the Gainesville Sun. Also, he does the afternoon show in the Gainesville area with Jeff Cardozo on the tailgate. So if you have any text or tweets that you want to get to Pat, send them along. You can also Facebook Live us on the Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Facebook Live comment question. And the number for the text on the Titan MR text line is 352-353-7465. Again, not a whole lot going on in the sports world. The one thing that I think excited a lot of sports fans is the Jordan documentary. I think it's 10 parts to that series that they were going to run this summer. They've moved that up till, I think, April 14th or somewhere around there. They're going to release that. I know a lot of people are excited to watch that. So, not a whole lot going on in the sports world, as we all know. If you want to shoot us, I'm not a big guy who watches a lot of movies or series on Netflix. Like I said, I'm the only human being probably in the world that does not have Netflix. But yeah, there's a lot of people out here that need something to watch. I know I've heard a lot about this Tiger King, which is pretty bizarre from what I hear. Taylor, have you watched Tiger King?
I haven't. I've watched an episode, yeah.
Okay. It's pretty crazy, huh?
I think it's an interesting show. I just haven't got around to watching a lot more of it.
Right. So, again, we're going to have Pat Dooley. I've already got some text coming in right now for Pat. We know that a lot of people enjoy reading his columns in the Gainesville Sun. But like I said, with the sports world, not a whole lot going on the NFL. There's still free agency. The draft is still going to move forward. I think the biggest surprise so far in the NFL right now, you got two first picks of the draft, former first picks of the draft, quarterbacks, Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, who neither have a team at this point. It just goes to show you in the NFL, it stands for not for long. Now, I think both of those guys will end up signing somewhere. Not sure if they will be starters or not. Cam's been banged up quite a bit, hasn't been the same player since he won the MVP several years ago. But his whole game is predicated off running the football, and that's when he was at his best. So he's been banged up, not the same player. Also, there was talk, JC and I talked yesterday about the NBA having a tournament, format like they do in the summer league there in Las Vegas to crown an NBA champion this year. Still talks there. Don't know if that'll happen. And I'm anxious to get Pat's thoughts on if we do go back to playing sports. And obviously college football is what we're all worried about, and that's what we enjoy. But how many people are going to be excited to come to the stadium? And I think that's the biggest question mark out there right now. And we'll get his thoughts, and I'd like to get your thoughts, and you can text them to us. You can Facebook Live us. But, the thoughts of, 95,000 people crammed into a stadium now with this virus out there, how many people are actually going to show up at the ballpark? And, now you can watch every game on TV, even before this happened. So it's going to be interesting. I think that's, these athletic associations rely on season ticket holders, boosters, and things of that nature. So it's a dicey situation at the time. Hang on, I have a text right here that just came in. Let me read that. It says, Shane, love the program. This is from Fred. What are you doing to pass your time? Can you pass along anything for us? Well, I'm an active kind of guy. I'm not a guy that sits around the house, although I've been trying to clean up some rooms here and get rid of some of the kids' stuff, donate it to Goodwill. But what I'm going to do today probably is I'm going to go in one of these backfields down in my neighborhood, and I'm going to take my pitching wedge and a bag of balls, and I'm going to get some wedge shots, from 100 yards out, 30 yards out. Just give me something to do to pass the time, because in the time being, there's nothing to do. Also, I jog a little bit. I hate running. I'm not a huge workout guy, but obviously you can't go to the gym. So I have been working out with my son, who has to do the Gator workouts. I can't finish them all, but I do some of the workouts with them. Some of the body movements that they do just hurts my body way too much. So that's how I'm trying to pass my time. I mean, it's very difficult times for all of us right now. But I'm not sure what else there is to do. Taylor, what are you doing to pass your time?
I'm editing podcasts. I still have a lot of editing that I do during the day. So
basically you do the same thing that you've been doing. Not a whole lot has changed for you.
Yes, except there's a lot less traffic, which is nice.
Yes. Well, tell you what, if you have to run to the grocery store, you have to run an errand or go to pick up some food somewhere, you're right. Gainesville is like a ghost town. I'm sure that's, many of our listeners are from all over the place. I'm sure that's the same for their cities that they live in. This is just a huge adjustment for all of us, and we don't know when it's going to end. They said locally here in the Gainesville area that they were hoping for kids to go back to school, I think May 4th. I don't see that happening. I'm not sure that they'll even return to their middle schools, high schools, or elementary schools this year. I think everything's going to be done online. I'd be anxious to know how many of our listeners are enjoying the homeschooling. I think now teachers are being appreciated so much more, realizing the ins and outs and the everyday work that is involved in being a teacher. I'm a son of a teacher and a coach. My mom was an English teacher for several years at our high school, and I think teachers are underappreciated for the most part. I can tell you one thing: I would not want to be a teacher. It's a very, very difficult job to do. And I think parents are figuring that out right now. We got we got a Facebook Live here, and this is from Gary. And Facebook Live comments are brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Gary says, Dooley, the GOAT of the Gators reporters. Ask Dooley his best interview. I will definitely do that. And Brett says, Dooley. Yeah, Dooley's got a lot of followers. There's no question about it. Been covering the Gators for many, many years. And anxious to get him on here, talk to him a little about what's going on in the sports world, how it has changed from a journalist standpoint. It's got to be very difficult for them to figure out what they're going to write in the paper when there's nothing going on. And Rick here has a Today in Sports, which we're going to have a Today in Sports as well. Since we don't have a play of the day, we're going to go ahead and get to that right now. Due to after our first break, we're going to go to Pat Dooley. But our play of the day, which is brought to you by Area Rug Masters. And our play of the day is going to be, let me pull this up right here. Play of the day, as I mentioned, brought to you by Area Rug Masters. Is your whole family stuck at home and tracking in mud and more stuff than usual, which they probably are because everybody's at home? Take your rugs to Area Rug Masters for a BOGO rug cleaning. When you mention the code Shane, call 352-448-5999. And today's on this day in sports, in 1990, 30 years ago, the Tradition Senior Men's Golf Tournament at Desert Mountain was Jack Nicklaus's first win in his first start on the Senior PGA Tour, and he beat Gary Player by 4 strokes. So that's his first start. Old Jack, the Golden Bear, goes out and wins his first event on the Senior Tour and defeats the Black Knight, Gary Player. That's our play today, which is brought to you by Area Rug Masters. And our good buddy Rick, his play today in sports, and of course, he goes to hockey. He says, a 1919 Stanley Cup final, the Seattle Ice Arena, Seattle, Washington, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Seattle Metropolitans tied at 2-1, trophy not awarded due to worldwide flu epidemic. Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of that. So they're going through something kind of similar to what we're going through right now. So hopefully you're staying safe out there, folks, wherever you're listening and watching from. This is Pod Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We want to thank all our sponsors as well. If you're here locally, go visit our sponsors. A lot of their restaurants are closed, but, take out, give them a call, order some food, go by there, pick it up. But anyway, it's a tough adjustment for all of us. I know JC was at the beach all week. He sent pictures, posted pictures. No one on the beach over there in St. Augustine, which is unheard of. But everything's shut down, and it's going to be shut down for a while, folks. So we got to hunker down, try to get through this. And Lordy, let's hope we're playing football at some point this year. The one question that I'm anxious to ask Pat is from a financial standpoint, what a lot of these athletic associations are going through, and maybe he can fill us in on what he knows. I personally think they may be making money while the spring sports are not playing due to, no spring sports bring in revenue pretty much. And the athletic association has to pay for all their travel, food, and those type things. So they're probably making money here. But if we do not have a football season, which brings in all the money for all the sports, a lot of athletic associations, athletic departments will be in huge, huge trouble. We got a text here on the Titan MR text line. It's from Fred, and that number, if you want to call us, is 352-353-7465. He says, I'm going to hit balls today too, Shane. There's nothing else to do, so I'm going to go chip and putt, and hopefully I don't get run off the golf course. Where a lot of golf courses, I know here in Alachua County, I think if they're not owned by the city, I think they're still open. They just had to change some of the rulings where everyone has to ride in their own cart. You don't touch the pins because they put the cups in the hole a little bit different where you can't take the pins out. And so, in my opinion, that's a pretty good way to get out and be active and, practice your social distancing, because you're never really close to anyone when you play golf, especially if you're not riding in a cart with someone else. So, going and chipping and putting, I don't see anything wrong with that at all. And it's similar than just going down in a field in your neighborhood and hitting balls just to get out of the house. But that's something that, I know some people are still playing tennis. Tennis, I think, you're touching the balls and stuff of your opponent. But obviously you're going to be playing with someone that may not be carrying the virus. So anyway, make sure you get your text and your Facebook Live comments in for Patrick. He'll be joining us here in about 2 minutes. And in the meantime, we're going to take our first time out of the program. You're watching and listening to Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to chill for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Gators Dockside, wings, ribs, seafood, and beer. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Radware Promotional Materials, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish, Gator BTW, Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Miapa Latin Cafe, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Okita America Martial Arts and After School, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Wrap Spot, Coldstone Creamery, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, and Style Cuts.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. April Fool's Day, folks, is today. I also want to let everybody know Jackie Spreads, who's currently on leave because he doesn't have anything to give his picks on, is brought to you by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice of dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. We're going to go now to the Titan MRI hotline, and we're joined by the Gainesville Sun's columnist, co-host of The Tailgate with Jeff Cardozo on WRUF, the one and the only Pat Dooley. Pat, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, good. I know he needs to be doing any April 1st jokes today. Okay, let's not do any April Fools.
Well, the only good thing about it being April 1st, Pat, is we can put March behind us.
Holy cow! It lasted forever, didn't it? It had to be the longest March ever. And to think that when it started, I was heading to Nashville for what I thought was going to be a fun basketball tournament to cover.
Now, did you ever make it to Nashville?
Yeah, I was there. I saw one game. It was Georgia and I can't remember who they played. Ole Miss, maybe. No. Anyway, so they played one game, and then at halftime or in between games, because this was a Wednesday night, they had the press conference with Greg Sankey where he said we're not going to play in front of fans, and then the whole Rudy Gobert thing happened, and I mean we all knew. We walked out of there that night, and I was talking to a bunch of guys, and they said, "We gonna see basketball tomorrow?" And most of them went, "Nah, I don't think so. I think this is the last time we'll be here for this week." So the next morning, I actually got dressed to go to the game because Florida was gonna play the second game. And as I'm walking out the door, I said, "You better check your phone, bro." Looked at my phone, canceled. Everything was canceled, and then the whole dominoes just started falling.
Yeah, it's crazy times. Pat, when you look at what the NCAA did, I think they got it right by giving kids, the spring sport kids, another year of eligibility. Talk a little bit about, do you agree with that? And is it going to be a nightmare for coaches from a standpoint? I know they're going to increase the limits of the rosters, but isn't that going to be very difficult to handle?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, there's like a team like I think Jeff was mentioning yesterday. TCU has like 7 or 8 seniors, and they're going to obviously have an incoming class, and now they're going to end up with like a 40-man roster, and it's going to be hard for them to deal with that. And for these schools too, I think it was really a tough call for the NCAA. The easy thing to say is, do the right thing, let these guys have their year back, but financially, it could be a nightmare, especially with what we're dealing with an unknown football season. Because I mean, Shane, football pays the bills. It's a financial model that is not the most stable in the world. If there's no football, we don't. You may see sports get cut, and yet for the NCAA to have to come back and say, yeah, let's add to that expense. And that's, I think, a lot of why they didn't allow the winter sports to do the same thing. Again, all these guys that didn't get to play for championships, you especially feel for teams like Dayton and Gonzaga and that were really good. But they at least got to play for their conference championship. And I think that at that point they said, look, we can't add another 13 full scholarship back to the mix. 11.7 is one thing. Now you add 13 more. Now you're talking about 24.7, and that's just basketball and baseball. That's not counting softball and track and other sports. So I think they did exactly what they felt, and apparently there wasn't a whole lot of debate about it when they got down to it. They knew they needed to do what was right for baseball and softball and sports like that.
Do you think in baseball specifically, because everybody, most baseball players, they're thinking they're going to go get drafted out of high school and go straight, to the minors or what have you. But then they decide to come play college baseball, and you got to be here X amount of years. But don't you think some of these seniors, even though they got screwed out of their senior year, don't they want to go ahead and make that jump and not have to worry about, because a lot of them, their scholarship is books here or a room and board or whatever. It's not a full scholarship, so they're still having to pay. Do they want to pay it for another year, or do they want to make that jump and go ahead and try to start making money playing professional baseball?
Well, some will, but Shane, I think the minimum now is 25%. So it used to be you could divide your scholarships any way you wanted. You could give a guy breakfast. In fact, going back to the Billy Horschel, I think got books when he first came to Florida. That was his entire scholarship. But now you have to at least give him 25%. But most guys, that if they were back for their senior years, there was a reason. I mean, they weren't going to get drafted. They weren't going to be high picks. In fact, Austin Langworthy wasn't even drafted last year. So I would think he would be back. When I talked to him and did that story on him, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, he said to me, either way, I'm fine. If they tell me I can't play, then I'll just go do something else. And if they want me to play, I'll play. So he seemed like he was pretty, if they wanted him back and giving him the same scholarship, he was good with it. So I think most of the guys will come back. The interesting part to me is going to be if you've got a group of really highly recruited freshmen coming in, and you may have to tell your guys, look, I've got to give you this scholarship. By rule, I don't have to, because that's the one thing they left it open for the college coaches to do, is say, you don't have to give it if you don't want it. But you may see some situations where some guys really get their feelings hurt and they're told, no, we really don't want you back. But I don't think there'll be very much of that, because, these seniors came back and played 16, 17 games, whatever they played. They pretty much came back for a reason. They could have all gone out as juniors. So
right.
It'd be interesting to see.
We're speaking with Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun. Pat, when you look at, all spring sports are being canceled. So from an athletic association standpoint, do you think they're making money by not having the spring sports? Because, none of those bring in a whole lot of revenue, if any at all. They have to pay for all the travel. But do you think most athletic departments are making money right now with having not to pay for any travel or anything like that from the spring sports?
Well, they won't make money because, in fact, we had Scott Strickland on last week, and he said it'll be a loss for Florida, for example, because they're not going to get as much money in because the NCAA tournament didn't happen, and that's a huge revenue getter for all the colleges. And again, I think they said it was $300-something million they're not going to send to the schools. Now, you have to realize that every school, in every conference gets a piece of that. So it's a chunk of money, but it's not a ridiculous chunk of money. But I think for them right now, like you said, they don't have to travel now. Florida doesn't have to go on the road for baseball. They don't, the recruiting, it's a dead period now for recruiting, and you save money there. So I think at most places it will be kind of a wash. And of course, the big thing is, football is 80% of the budget almost everywhere. So if we don't have football games in the fall, that will be a financial disaster for these schools. There's already been talk about whether some schools will. I don't think Florida would be in this situation, but whether some of these schools would actually have to cut sports. Just to miss one football season could be that disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Even if we do get to play football this year, and I think we all have our fingers crossed, because I don't know what this country will go to if we don't have football. But nowadays you can sit at home before any of this happened, and you could watch pretty much every game in the country on your TV in your recliner, and attendance has been down. So what do you think attendance is going to be like now with 90-something thousand people crammed, sitting inches apart from one another? I mean, attendance is really going to hurt, don't you think?
I would think so. You're sitting butt cheek to butt cheek in that stadium at Florida. It's you know they've changed the seating several times over the years, where they actually move the seats in closer so to get more people in there. And now eventually they're going to get to where they're going to change that, because obviously as the tennis drops, Florida's going to end up being in like an 80,000 seat stadium. But I don't know about how you feel about it, Shane, but just the thought of 90,000 people being in that stadium makes me kind of cringe right now. So I don't think, and we had Barrett Sallee on yesterday. He said until they have a vaccine, he doesn't see any way they play football. And that may be a while. That may be December or January before they have that. Because how can you put guys, even the players, on campus and without having some kind of a vaccine? So I don't know. I really hope we're going to have football, but there's only one way we can do it, and that's to do it in a safe way. But just like you said, it's hard to think about a packed stadium on a hot, September day like
Right. Right. We got a text here on the Titan MR text line from Joseph in Atlanta. He says, Pat, what's your favorite Gator sport that you've ever covered?
It's always football. I'm a football nut. I really like basketball. Shane, I like to cover baseball and softball and all the sports of Florida. It's one of the great things about living in this town is that Florida is so good at everything that you can just kind of pick, even in the spring, a sport to go cover and know you're going to go see quality athletes. But I'm a football guy all the way, and there's nothing like a Saturday in the swamp. It's we saw it for the Auburn game last year. We saw it for the LSU game the year before. Those atmospheres are the most fun thing you deal with.
We have a Facebook Live comment question brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. It comes from Gary. He says, Dooley, you're the greatest of all time of the Gators reporters. Ask Dooley his best interview.
First of all, it's Mr. Dooley.
Mr. Dooley.
I will tell you, I've done a list before of my favorite interviews, and I would put Joakim Noah, Tim Tebow, and Bridget Sloan at the top of my list. Bridget Sloan was the most interesting person I ever talked to. Always, even when she was a freshman, she was fun to talk to and always gave really great answers and did, kind of sassy and would tell what she thought. And Joakim Noah was just the most interesting person I ever talked to when he was a college student. Not so much now, but certainly as a college student, he was amazing. And so those were really, we used to love, though, Shane, back in the old days, sitting there talking to Judd Davis and Shane Edge. Those were pretty good interviews, too. You would sit there for hours talking to those guys. I didn't think they wanted to go out and kick.
They didn't do a whole lot of practice. They didn't do a whole lot of practice anyway, so they could shoot the breeze with the media boys.
Yeah, they loved it, and guys like Donnie Young were always great. And back in those days, and Shane, because you were a big part of it, but back in those days, it was a totally different relationship between the media and the players. We really enjoyed our interview sessions. They were fun. We talked to guys, and we were kind of in it together. But everything kind of changed with the internet and everything, and people taking shots. So not as much fun now as it used to be.
Right. We got another text on the Titan MR text line from Susan from Lake City. She says, Pat, where does the Kyle Trask story rank in your stories of Gator football?
Well, it's right up there. It is one of the best stories. In fact, the funny thing is, Shane, last summer I set up to do an interview with him, and at the time Will Pantages was the Florida SID for football, and he said he doesn't really want to do an interview right now because he's still not sure what he's going to do. And then finally he called me about a month later and says, hey, he's ready to do it. And I went and did it, and it was a really fun interview with him. But I'm not thinking he's going to be playing you know, in the ball. I'm just thinking this is a pretty amazing story that this guy's still hanging around. And then not only does he come in and save the day with that Kentucky game, but goes on to have one of the great years in Florida football history, passing the ball and with an offense that can't run, and says we got to pass. So I think it's a great, one of the best stories I've ever dealt with. I hate to say this, it's kind of sad, but the Miron Ball story was a great story until, of course, he got sick again and passed away.
Mm-hmm.
That was tragic, but him coming back and playing that one year was an amazing story. And
yep.
But yeah, there's always been some really good stories there. I remember Bo Carroll was a great story. He came from real poverty situations, sleeping in his car, and ended up being a really good football player.
We're speaking with Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun. Send us a text or a tweet if you got any questions for him. We got a tweet here from, it doesn't say who it's from. It just says, Shane, I love the show. I was a junior at UF in 1990 and made the trip to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Would love to hear both yours and Pat's memories of that game. Stay safe. Oh, it's from Joe. Yeah, Joe, that, in my opinion, the Alabama game in 1990 is the most important game in Florida football history. And the reason I've always said this, Pat, I don't know if you've heard my reasoning, is because when Coach Spurrier took over the job, he's like, look, we're going to win. If we're going to win championships here, Florida's always had good teams, but they couldn't win championships because they couldn't win SEC road games. And that was his first road game. And we go to maybe the most historical program in the conference with all their claimed national titles. We didn't play great, but we found a way to win the game. And I think that kind of set the tone for his era and Florida football after that.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, I think we were stunned when they won that game. They had gone to Birmingham and beaten Alabama in '87 when Emmett was a freshman,
mm-hmm.
and he had run crazy that day. I think he had over 200 yards. But then they would go on the road the next time and get beat. So they ended up, I think, 7-5 or whatever that year. So not only did he win that game and find a way to win that game, and I think that was a Will White 3-pick game.
Yes.
And blocked the punt, and of course he threw that ball to Ernie Mills. That was a big play. But I know Coach Spurrier feels strongly that was the turning point. That was where the guys started believing that they could win those kind of games, and that was I think it changed the course of Florida football. The funny thing is, I wasn't at that game. I wasn't. I was a sports editor at the time, so I think Bobby Tyler, whoever was covering the game, maybe Bill King, but your buddy Bill King, remember him?
Yeah, I know him there. Yeah.
But when I went there in '98 was the famous game where they played terrible and somehow won the game. And after the game, Spurrier said we played like a bunch of losers, and the AP writer misquoted him because he didn't hear him real well. He said the quote came over the AP wires: "We played like a bunch of lizards." Spurrier said. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, we got a Facebook Live comment here from Ben, brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. He says, just saw the news yesterday about the Gainesville Sun downsizing and pay cuts. How does Pat see this affecting the paper going forward?
I see it affecting me. That's what I really see. But, obviously we knew something was going to come. I mean, they're like Sports Illustrated just basically dissolved. The Tampa Bay Times did the same thing. I know my friend Matt Baker, who does a great job covering college football, is now writing business stories because, and I think that's where I'm going to be heading, is doing those kind of stories, especially if we don't have fall sports. But it's just what we have to do. It's what we have to deal with. I understand why it happened. And it could have been worse, is the way I look at it. We'll deal with it here. Luckily I have a wife that has a great job, and I was toying with the idea of retiring in November. I may not have a choice by then. I mean, there's no telling what we're going to be dealing with as this thing goes forward.
No doubt. We're speaking with Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun. Also, you can hear him on the tailgate with Jeff Cardozo. weekdays from 4 to 6 on WRUF. You can follow him at Twitter at Pat_Dooley. We got a text here on the Titan MR text line from Tom in Jacksonville. He says, Pat, can't read. My eyes are getting bad, Pat.
Yeah.
Will schools have to restructure the pay scale for the coaches' salaries?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I'm kind of waiting for the shoes to drop in terms of head coaches in football, especially, and in some cases basketball, saying, "Hey, look, because of the financial hardships we're dealing with, I'm going to take a pay cut." Because all around you see, that Mark Emmert and all the NCAA people just took a 20% pay cut. We see it in different areas of businesses where people taking pay cuts are not getting paid. CEOs that have plenty of money, but football coaches at the highest level, as you know, Shane, have plenty of money, and they can take a hit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something happen. I don't think it'll happen right away. I don't think it will happen until we know that football is either going to be delayed drastically or reduced in terms of number of games, and the finances aren't going to be there. As long as we have a football season, I don't think that's going to have that people are going to have to restructure. As I said earlier, it's kind of a wash right now for a school like Florida because they don't have to send teams on the road and don't have to spend money on recruiting right now. But eventually, if we get into September and October, you may see coaches come forward and go, "Hey, look, I want to take a 20% pay cut, or I want to take a big chunk of money and donate." I know Tom Herman, I think, just recently did that, donating money to a food bank. So we'll see. I mean, it's a very volatile situation and I know we're not trying to make it all about sports, but that's what you're doing. You're doing a sports show, so we want to talk sports. It's obviously there's more important things going on in this world, but it's certainly an interesting and volatile situation. Very fluid, I think, with all the finances of college sports.
Yeah, speaking of that too, with the way these facilities are being built around the country, and Florida was supposed to break ground, once the baseball season was over. I'm curious now, will that football only facility be put on hold? Obviously, as you mentioned, there's bigger things out there than a facility and football and all that right now. But since we're talking sports, that's one thing that I've been preaching for the last 10 years is we're behind in facilities and we're getting ready to catch up with the big boys. And now it's going to put us behind the 8 ball again.
Yeah. The funny thing is I actually asked Scott, about 3 weeks ago, "Hey, are you thinking about just tearing the stadium down now because, and getting started?" But they're not on schedule to do that. Their schedule is at the end of the year, and that's when the company's contracted. He made it sound when he had his little press conference that like they're still fine on that because they've already raised the money. It's come from private donations. It's not like they are needing some kind of bond or anything like that. And my gut is that they are going to go right on schedule as far as tearing that baseball stadium down. I made a suggestion. You don't want the last thing that ever happened in that stadium to be a loss to FSU. They got to come up with an alumni game or something if they can figure out some way to do something else there. So the last thing you ever have at that baseball stadium isn't 2-0 loss to Florida State.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That was the last game of the season too, right?
Last game of the season. Karen was pointing out to me the last 2 games I covered were a loss to FSU in baseball and a loss to Kentucky in basketball. And I didn't appreciate her pointing that out to me.
We got a Facebook Live comment here from Michael, brought to you by Pound Herd. He says, "Pat, don't retire."
Well, I don't know if I'm going to have a choice in that now. I mean, that's the thing we're all dealing with is a lot is going to depend on football season. Now, I will say this because if we do get a football season, even if it starts in October or whatever, the chances of me retiring aren't very good. I don't want to do it now. I think it's rekindled my love for what I do for a living. But I may not have a choice because who knows if we don't have anything to cover. There's nothing to cover. There's no point being a sports writer, right?
Yeah, I mean it's hard doing a sports talk show when you don't have sports to cover. We got a great text here. I like this text from Leroy on the Titan MR text line. He says, Pat, can you tell us the differences and similarities in covering Spurrier, Urban, and now Dan Mullen?
Wow. Well, obviously covering Coach Spurrier was the best thing that ever happened in my life. I loved covering him in my professional life. And to this day, he called me yesterday. He was mad at something Robbie wrote. So
he called me too.
Yeah, we had a long talk about the '92 team, but he's so great. He's the most interesting guy I've ever covered. He's the most unique person I've ever covered. I got along with Urban better than any other sports writer, kind of because I was willing to overlook the negatives with him. And maybe I wasn't doing as good a job as I should have, but I also knew I needed to be able to call him. I needed to be able to text him and get information from him. And that's part of being in a place like Gainesville where you're a one horse town kind of. And I got along with him. And I think there was a really good side to Urban. It's just that he could be so tone deaf when it came to things that he acted like they mattered to him, but when they really came down to it, it was all about winning. And I think Urban at Ohio State was a little bit better than he was at Florida, and I think he admits that he's made some mistakes here. But I got along fine with him. Now, we haven't spoken since the Zach Smith thing because I kind of got on him about that, but and he changed his cell phone. So, but we haven't spoken since that day, the day of that press conference, which is kind of weird. But Dan, look, when Dan was at Florida, nobody had any kind of relationship with him. He was, and that was one reason I think Jeremy didn't hire him. Jeremy he just wasn't the most friendly guy in the world. He learned a lot, and he became a lot better as a person, as a coach, and came back to Florida and, has been tremendous. Our press conferences with him are almost Spurrier-like. I mean, they're interesting. The questions get answered, and I know that we're not holding it up to that big of an ideal because with McElwain, you never got a straight answer to any question, and that was the most miserable 3 years I ever spent with a guy. But Dan's fun. Now, I will say this: Dan is very much. Here's my press conference. I'll hang around and talk to you guys after it. But once I walk out of the door, I'm off limits to you guys. So he's very still reserved in that area. He knows when his time is to do stuff with the media, but he's really good with it. All we ask for is that when we have a press conference with you, is that you give us straight answers and you're interesting. That's all. It's not a whole lot. We're never going to get another Spurrier.
No, I do think, as you mentioned, Dan is totally different than he was when he was here under Urban. I think maybe coaching at Mississippi State, he learned a ton, but he reminds me, having been around him a lot now, he's got a lot of Spurrier in him and a lot of Urban. I think he's a combination of both.
Right. That's a good point, Shane, because he does have kind of Urban sense of discipline and commitment. But he's still got that Spurrier swagger to him, and it's a great situation. And I know Coach Spurrier loves him being here and, loves the way they call plays.
Pat, let's talk a little bit about football. If we do play, do you think Florida has bridged that gap and can compete against Georgia for the East this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they competed against them the last 2 years, but the difference is, can they beat them? And that comes down to simply trying to find a way to win the game. And they haven't been able to do that. They've got to find a way to be a little bit better. And there's no doubt about it. But, the thing, Shane, is I think the talent gap has been bridged a little bit, but it's still there. Georgia's still recruited better than Florida. Now, you know who else has in the last 5 years? Florida State's recruited better than Florida. If you look at their average rankings, how's that worked out for them? So, you can certainly win the East. You can certainly beat Georgia. I don't think it would be a stretch. I think the early odds that came out were that Florida was a 2-point underdog to Georgia, which is a pick'em game basically. So you just got to do it, and that's the thing. The probably the thing I love most about Coach Spurrier is going 11-1 against Georgia, because I lived through Lindsey Scott and all the other stuff and all those terrible losses that Florida had to Georgia, and that was for him to just every year you kind of knew he was going to find a way to beat them. That's what they've got to do. They've got to find a way to beat Georgia, and if they can do that, they can do anything. They can win a national title.
Don't you think, with no spring football, we don't know what the status of fall football is going to be, but let's just say is an abbreviated season or however it may turn out, that's going to hurt Georgia, wouldn't you think, with a new quarterback coming in, with a new offensive coordinator coming in?
I think it's going to hurt everybody with something new in front of it. In other words,
Mike Leach in Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mike Leach, Lane Kiffin, obviously Mike Norvell at FSU. All the new quarterbacks that are coming in. Mike Leach has got KJ Costello's not even on campus yet, and who knows when he's going to get on campus. So, and Georgia certainly is in that boat. Now they're going to have a great defense again, and they've managed to find ways to win games even when they weren't that good on offense, but without the wide receivers that maybe they were hoping to have last year. But yeah, it's definitely an advantage for Florida having a quarterback that knows the offense. You don't have to teach him anything. Having a coach who's been around, having assistant coaches for the most part, the staff hasn't changed. And I tell you one thing that I was talking about yesterday, and I'm curious to see. Last year Florida really got hurt in the transfer portal in terms of depth. As you know, Shane, losing 10 guys. Well, there's not going to be a spring this year, so there's no time to find out where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
So guys may not be as eager to leave. I mean, what's the point of leaving? If you don't want to leave now, why would you want to leave in September or October? I mean, you pretty much know where you stand right now. So I think that will help their depth too. And I think that's going back to your question about closing the gap. I think the roster that Florida has is better than the roster of last year because they've been able to add so much depth to it. And they're not going to get caught maybe in some of those situations like they did when Grenard and Zuniga were hurt or C.J. Henderson was hurt. I think the roster is so much better.
We got a text here on the Titan MR hotline. It says it's from Tim. He says he wants to ask me to ask you about your golf tournament and the status of it.
That's a great question, and we're kind of right where football season is. We were supposed to be May 9th. That clearly is not going to happen. We were in the process of gathering prizes. We had a ton of really good stuff already in. Billy Horschel was going to donate a foursome at the TPC and playing with him. We're in good shape on the tournament, except for the part that we can't play. So, Ironwood, as you know, is closed, has been closed for a while because the city wanted to close it, and probably they were probably ahead of the curve on that. I'm not sure why some of these courts are open at this point, but we'll see. At some point we may have to just postpone it for a year and come back next year and continue to raise money for Stop Jones Cancer. But but we're gonna do everything we can to try to play. The trouble is once we get to late August, we can't play it. Because obviously football with only one open day. It's kind of weird, Shane. I was thinking about this. I go, well, there are plenty of open dates we could play, and I go, wait, there's only one. This is a normal year, not like last year we had 3 open dates. That was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Got a final text here for you, Pat. We appreciate you joining the program today. This text comes from Lisa on the Titan MRI text line. She wants to know, Pat, which team would you take, the 96, 06, or 08 team?
Well, that's a good – I think the 08 team was incredibly talented. If you're just going based on talent, there's no doubt how good they were. All the NFL players that came out of that team. There was a
ton of NFL guys on that 96 team too, though.
There were, and the thing about that 96 team is it's hard to put into context because of the separation in years,
Right.
how much players changed and how the game changed. As you know, Shane, especially even when you first started, teams were covering, great wide receivers with strong safeties and linebackers. They didn't know how to handle the Spurrier offense. And even into 96, they were still struggling to handle it. So, but you know what? With the HBC on the sideline, I might take that 96 team just because he'd figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, all three of those teams, man, they were so talented, and hopefully we'll get back to those days. Well, Pat, we appreciate you joining the program. We look forward to having you back sometime. Enjoy working with Cardozo, and be safe, my friend.
All right, you too, Shane. And anytime you need me, just give me a call. I'll be happy to do it.
All right, that's Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun joining the program on the Titan MR hotline. We're going to take our second time out of the program. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Gators Dockside, wings, ribs, seafood, and beer. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Radware Promotional Materials, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish, Gator BTW, Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Miapa Latin Cafe, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Okita America Martial Arts and After School, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Wrap Spot, Coldstone Creamery, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, and Style Cuts.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Point is where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming soon the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. We got one last Facebook Live comment brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. John says football will probably be canceled this year. He's beginning to think, and let's hope not. On tomorrow's program, we're going to have Billy Horschel from the PGA Tour. I think the 2014 FedEx Cup champion. Gator, great guy. We'll talk to him about what's going on right now, what he's doing in the Northeast Florida area, food banks and things of that nature, doing a lot of charity work. Good guy. So if you got any texts, tweet us, all that good stuff. We'll have questions for Billy Horschel tomorrow. But we want to thank Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun for joining the program today. Like I said, today's show's a wrap. It's brought to you by Wrap Spot. The vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot will give your business years of brand recognition and increased sales. Call Wrap Spot today. Stay safe, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.